In this video, we will going to learn how to insert the data into our database to store it properly and use it for the future. So let's get started. In previous video, we connected our database successfully. For the insertion part, we obviously gonna need a HTML form because PHP dependent on HTML for front-end user input. Now, if I go back to our PHP MyAdmin, you can see we created a database named course. In that database right now there is nothing. So to store the data into the database we need a table, and table exists of rows and column. I'm gonna tell you later in this video, don't worry about that right now. We're gonna take the example of animals. So let's create the table of animals. Contained the ID of the animal, the name of the animal, the age of the animal, and the time we are creating it. So 4 columns we need. As soon as I click go, it will gonna go ahead and ask me the name of the columns. As I told you, we're gonna select ID for column 1, name for column 2, age for column 3, and created at for column 4. Now there are some things that you need to keep an eye on, like this is the name of the column, this is the type of the column. The type is basically, there are tons of types. For integer you select int. Our ID will always be an integer, and to make sure we have a unique data column, at least one unique column, we always select id as a auto increment. This is the auto increment, you have to check it. For the id, we are creating a table, and make sure whenever we create the table we add a column, one column with the unique auto increment here, so we can easily access our data using that auto increment, and there will be no duplication in that column. So id always be integer. Length we don't always have to define it, but sometimes we do. Default value we don't have to touch it for the id column because it will be auto increment. And then collation, you don't have to worry about that at all. Attributes, not at all. Null, only you check this when you want the default value to be nullable. Now talk about the name column. Name can be alphabet and numbers and special character. For that you have to select varchar. Varchar is a special character type for database column which give you the ability to store anything inside this column. And for varchar we always have to define the value, the limit, the length of the data storage. We will gonna always keep in mind, we will gonna always set 255. That's the maximum length of varchar. And don't worry about that. Even if you are storing a single letter, varchar have a ability to automatically check how many numbers of data and how much bigger data you are storing. So if it is just 1, it will only gonna consume 1. If it is 255, it will only gonna consume 255. Now age always it will be integer. Created date, it will be a varchar 255. Let's add another column which we'll call description. Let's move this one down so you do not get confused and we have a better area and a structure. We will gonna call it description. In description, it could be very long, very short, totally depend on the user. So for that, we will gonna use a text. We're gonna scroll down and here it is, text. Basically, text is a storage where you don't have a limitation. You can store a big chunk of text and everything in the text. If you are storing a big amount of data into varchar or any other type, it will gonna cut after the limitation. But with the text, you don't have to worry about that. You can store as big as you want, but again, not that big that it will gonna crash your entire database or website. For created at, we can say it can be nullable. For description, we will gonna set the default value to null, even though, also null here, even though if we leave that none and remove this from here, it will not gonna store anything here. But if it is null or if it is 0 or whatever, by default you can even define here as defined. You can set anything like 0 or ABC, whatever. So when you are storing the data, it will automatically be stored as ABC if you do not provide the value for this column. You will gonna understand it in a minute. Now we are not defining any value here. For age, we can say define it as 0. And as you have noticed, we can set current timestamp as well for created at by default. So save this all. We can go ahead and save it. It is processing. Now our structure for database table is ready. We have ID, which is auto increment, and it is a primary column key. Primary column key is, again, I told you before, you have to set one primary key auto increment column in every table. That's a must thing. Then we have name, then we have age, description, and created it. Now head over to our script. Now we will gonna create a form, and the method would be post, action would be this same page. Now we're gonna create an input, type would be text, and name would be name, as we will gonna take the animal name. And there will be another input, and we will gonna call it number. That would be age. Another, we're gonna take this time text area for our description. Text area can take anything to store, and it will give you a nice and lengthy area so you can write. We're gonna name it description, in short DESC. Now at last we will gonna have button. Type of this button will be submit, so when a user press it, it will submit the form. If I save it, come back here, refresh. Okay, we have a form. It's not looking good at all, but it will gonna do the work. To style it, we can simply add a little bit of styling here. Margin bottom 20 pixel. We will gonna put this to all of our inputs. And now for form, we will gonna add a style width. We're gonna define a width of 400 pixel. Now save it, come back, refresh, and you have a good form with the better styling. I know it is still looking ugly, but don't worry about that. Our course is not about HTML or CSS. So right now, if I add something, name is Jeff, age is 2. This is a dog with a big height. If I submit it, sorry, we add the slash, which is taking us to this page. Sorry, let me refresh. If I submit now, nothing happened. Why? Because we are not processing this form right now. So let's process this form right now. We will gonna use PHP, and we will gonna set a condition here, server request method. We will gonna check the request method. If it is equals to post, then we will gonna process our form. Now we will gonna check if not empty, and we will gonna provide the variable, as well as we have to copy all this, paste it here, again paste, and this time age and DESC. So all of our values are mandatory. If not, it will gonna throw an error, missing data. Once it have all three inputs, we can go ahead and store that into our database. Now here we're gonna write our query, and we have to store the query into a variable. And always remember that you have to wrap the query inside a single or double quote. So we will gonna say insert into and the table name that we use, and make sure the table name is case sensitive. So if you're using all lower cases, in our case we are using all the lower cases in our table name. Insert into our table name. The table was animal, and then we open a round bracket and close it, and then we set values and then round bracket and close it. So this is the structure of insertion query. Now here we will gonna define or write the name of the columns that we wanna store the value in. In our case, we have to define a value of name, comma, to separate the column name, age, comma again, and then description. These three columns that we want to store. ID will be auto increment, and created at have a default value. So if we do not write anything here, it will gonna take the default value. And for the values, let me set 3 sections for them. And now here we have to pass the post variable. There are 2 ways to pass it, because we cannot add single quote and then again single quote inside it. It will gonna give you the error. So we can either go like that. This is the one way. And the other way is to just concatenate our string and wrap this up again properly. These are the 2 ways. Now the reason we are wrapping our variable into single quote or double quote, it is because the string. For age, we are not adding a string, so we can simply remove the string quotation from here as well as from here. So keep in mind, double quotation is a wrapper quotation, which is wrapping the entire query string. And to break the concatenation, we are breaking it from here and then starting again from here, breaking again here, starting again, so on. And in after that, we are passing our variables. So we have to wrap them again if we are using this method. If we are using the first method, we don't have to break and continue the concatenation like that. So let's go with the second option, which is the most feasible and proper option. Now we have to run this query, and to run that we have to use again the same object of our database, and we will gonna say query, and we will parse this query string, and now we will gonna store result into this result variable. If this query runs properly without any error and everything, this function will gonna return true, otherwise it will always gonna return false. So we can check if return from this result is true, then we can echo successfully inserted. Otherwise we can provide the error. We can say query did not run. Or if you wanna be more descriptive with your error, you can append it error like that, save it, come back to our browser, refresh. We have refresh Jeff H2. This is a dog with a big height. Now if I save it, missing data. Alright, 1 second. The reason why missing data, okay, yeah, because we use the wrong word. It is DESC. We misspell it. Save it again. Refresh. Jeff. Ages 2. This is a dog with big height. Query did not run. Error. Course animal doesn't exist. Oh, 1 second. You see, we again made a mistake. It was animals. It's plural. Save it, come back here. We are keep making a mistakes, but that's not an issue. This is a dog with big height. Submit again. Oh god, I am going crazy here. We are using a wrong spelling here. Now we have to change this, and to change it we have to go to operations and then rename the table animals. It's good that this happened, so you can learn. We can click go. Now it is animals. We have to just refresh and resend the data. Don't have to refill it again. Successfully inserted. If I come back here, click on animals, and there you go. We have one raw here, one record, and it is taking a current time. So that's good. It is storing and inserting. Now let's add another animal. Name is Simba, age 6 year, and this is a lion. Submit, successfully inserted. If I come back, refresh, and there you go. Notice that ID is automatically inserting here, and the creating date is taking the default value from our settings, and everything is looking fine. So this is about the insertion. Take care for now. Bye bye.